Hey guys, GameZach here, and welcome to a gameplay video For Honor. Now, this weekend I managed to get into the closed beta and wanted to share my experience of the game with you because it's a very interesting game that's coming up, and people who have been in the alpha sort of said it wasn't really that great, and there's been some criticism of how it's been going along. So I wanted to try out the game a little bit and see what I think of it and show you guys what I think of it as well. And as with any of my other gamer encounters, you can click the eye icon in the top right of this video to weigh in your own opinion of what you think of For Honor so far. Do you think it's a good game? Do you think it's a bad game? I don't know. What do you think? I'd love to hear things from your point of view. Anyway, jumping into the For Honor closed beta, it sort of starts you off by asking which faction you want to fight for, Knights, Vikings, Samurai. So you do pick who you want to side with, but that does not limit the heroes or the factions you can actually play in-game. If you pick Samurai here, you can still play Knight characters later on. And then you jump into the customization of your emblem. So basically creating your own logo for your character or your profile in the game. And it's got a lot of options there, not just in terms of colors, but in designs and all sorts of stuff. You can do almost anything. You can change the size of things, you can change the border, you can change the colors. It's very cool. So I went with this design because I tend to have that triangle on my thumbnails here on YouTube, so I went ahead and did that. And I do tend to pick a snake. I'm not sure why, but I do tend to pick snakes in these sorts of games. My favorite animal is a pangolin, but they never have a pangolin logo, do they? But I was impressed with how much you could actually customize the logo. You could rotate things, you could shift things around, you could scale them. It's really good. And the game does then immediately throw you into the tutorial, which you sort of have to complete to understand the basics of the game. So I went through the tutorial, it sort of explained the controls, locking onto opponents, and this is where it introduces the whole art of the battle system, the combat system in For Honor. And I was very interested in trying this out for myself because it's sort of a very deliberate combat system. It's even more rigid than, for example, the Dark Souls combat system, where it is very meticulous, it is very purposeful, every movement should be on purpose, and if you make a mistake, you will be punished for it. And in For Honor, it feels equally as punishing as in Dark Souls. So even though it's a more rigid combat system, where you lock onto an enemy and you do this sort of walking around each other in circles, but in For Honor, you have these three directions, and you move the mouse in the direction you wanted to position yourself. So you got the lower right, the lower left, and up. And where you move your mouse in these directions actually positions your weapon in that direction. And if, for example, someone attacks you from the lower left, if you move your mouse to the lower left to defend, you will be able to defend that attack. So this sort of quick changing between stances to defend and then change stance to attack. It was very interesting, and it was not actually too difficult to get into. If you're sort of used to melee combat in the past, you'll be able to pick this up quite quickly, though getting good at it obviously will take some time. But the sense that I really got when fighting in For Honor is that it is incredibly skill-based. The skill ceiling in For Honor is very, very high because it was surprisingly more twitch-based than I was expecting, because to defend, it could be split seconds, which makes a difference, whether you're defending, attacking, dodging, or shield breaking. There's a good set of moves that you can do, from light attacks to heavy attacks to throwing your opponent, and when it comes to choosing more characters and heroes, there are many different weapons, from standard swords to samurai swords to maces and shields and stuff like that. And the tutorial sort of brings you through all of these things, from fighting dummies at the start, to killing AI characters, to fighting those NPC basically creeps, really. And it teaches you all the basics. So once I got through that, I decided, okay, before I jump into multiplayer, let's jump into a duel versus the AI. So this 1v1 duel is probably where a lot of the skill is going to be proven. And versus my first AI fight, I did not bad. I did die the first time round, but then I managed to get back on my feet and started to learn how the AI behaves. And after just one fight with the AI, it felt like there were ways that I could already predict how the AI was going to behave. Now, this is probably an easier AI, since it was my first AI game. But I do have a feeling that fighting versus the AI is gonna be just for practice and warm-up, really, and fighting in multiplayer is where things get really difficult. So of course, the next thing I tried to do is to get into multiplayer, but this is the closed beta, so I had a lot of difficulty. I couldn't get into any of the 4v4 games. I tried getting to a 4-player versus AI game, and that also didn't work. It just kept disconnecting, or the servers had problems. But what I could get into were the 1v1 duels. So here's footage of me in my first ever multiplayer duel, and this one was a bit more of a tough one. Now, I was against someone else who was, of course, new to the game, as it's a closed beta that's just been sort of sent around. So I did try my best here. I'm versus Ray with then a bunch of numbers after that, but Ray put up a very good fight. And the whole duel process took about just over 7 minutes, and I would expect most duels to be done below 10 minutes, really. And well, right now what you're watching is me versus Ray, and it can be... Well, I was going very, very carefully, and I was trying to do my best here, and eventually, well, things turned out okay. So, as you can see from the footage here, combat is very, very deliberate, and I do have to say that combat here is very satisfying. It feels very good to defeat your opponent, because it's so skill-based. When you defeat the opponent, you really do feel like it was an achievement. You did that. You were the one who caused the opponent to die. And as far as I can tell, there is almost no luck involved. It is all timing based, it's all skill based. And when you mess up, and you will mess up a lot when you first start, you will be punished for it. Like, if you accidentally attack when you should be defending, you will get hit first. If you do a heavy attack and it takes too long and the enemy does a quick attack, well, you'll get hit and your attack would be cancelled. And then, of course, there's the whole art of the battle thing, where you're positioning yourself in the 3 stances, top, lower left, or lower right. And all of that is very Twitch-based. And the interesting thing that I find about the For Honor combat system, the art of the battle, is that on the one hand, it is very deliberate. It's very slow, it's very purposeful, you're planning, you're positioning, you're timing. But then on the other hand, it's very, very twitchy. It's Twitch-based combat, where you're changing between the 3 stances, like, within split seconds, and it does make a big difference. Knowing when to attack with a light attack or with a heavy attack, or trying to throw your opponent, or dodging, and you can dodge and dodge roll in any direction you like. So it's the mix of this very slow strategic movement with the very skill-based, very fast-paced Twitch combat. And I think that's where the strength of For Honor really does lie, in this combat system. And when it comes to liking the game overall, I think it's gonna boil down to how much you like this combat system. And I think you can see from the footage on screen right now what it's like and whether you're gonna like it, but I've watched videos of For Honor before this, and you really don't get the feel of the combat system unless you give it a try yourself. Because watching someone else fight this sort of thing, it is a bit of a spectacle. But when you're in it, when you're controlling your character versus this other guy who's trying to kill you, well, it's a lot more stressful, and you really start to feel the skill required in terms of this fight. Now, the final question for Honor is its longevity. How long are people going to be playing this? Because there have been these similar sort of multiplayer games in the past, and some live for a few years, some go on for a bit longer, some die out within a year or two. And of course, the question remains whether For Honor could even be an esport. Now, I don't expect For Honor to be so much of an esport to the point where there are massive global tournaments or anything like that. But it does have the potential, because the only 2 things you need for an esport is for the gameplay to be skill-based and for it to be a spectator sport. An esport needs to be watchable, right? Purely skill-based games that are boring to watch never make it as an esport. And For Honor sort of tries to make the game somewhat more watchable by adding in a bit more flavor to the game. For example, there's emotes that you can do. You know, there are execution moves, and these things are unlocked as you progress through the game. There is a bit of a progression system where you're able to unlock new looks and designs for your characters. You can make yourself look a bit more flashy, and even unlock new execution moves, which can be very cool. It's a great thing for the spectacle side. So in theory, For Honor could definitely be an esport. It's skill-based, it's heavily skill-based, and it is watchable. It is interesting and fun to watch. But I'm not sure if it's fun enough to watch, if it's enough of a spectator sport. But either way, I have limited experience right now in terms of playing the game myself. So what do you think? Do you think For Honor could become an esport? Or do you think it's just gonna be a fun multiplayer game that people play for a while? I mean, there's plenty of room for the game to expand to keep things interesting. They could add new maps, new heroes to pick from, and of course new looks, emotes, and executions, which will all keep things a bit more fresh. But that's up to the developers on how quickly that stuff will come out. Anyway, that's been my experience with the For Honor closed beta so far. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm just gonna leave you with the rest of my multiplayer duel here, just so you can see how things worked out in the end. Thank you, Ray, for being a formidable opponent, and for the great match, and thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and found it useful, and I'll see you in the next video.
Round 4. Shoot!